And we're live.
Hello.
We're
Welcome to
live.
the first live stream of the Many Worlds Productions YouTube channel.
Yeah.
I'm Mike,
I'm
and
Anthony.
we're science nerds, right?
That's what we are. That's why
And,
we're here.
and we're going to talk about science fiction shows, fantasy shows. We're going to give our own theories about those, talk about storytelling, because we're very into storytelling.
You talk about music. Music's a big deal with us too.
Mhm.
Not just people who listen to music, but we also have made music in the past, which is something else that we've done in our history together. As our world has grown, hence the title, "The Many Worlds of Mike and Anthony." So, yeah. Looking forward to having these discussions, and hopefully everybody out there listening can join us and wants to join us and wants to come back every week or so once we get this rolling. This is the pilot episode. Just want to let everybody know. So
So we don't have any fancy intros.
nothing yet.
We don't have any. I have a theme song written. We'll find out if it's any good after I record it.
And for the audience, I literally asked him to put together a theme song like a week ago. So yeah, it's gonna happen.
Well, I got it written, so that's half the battle.
Yeah.
I just need to throw together a bunch of tracks.
Yeah, master it a little bit, right? Got to do the master track. So
yeah. Well, I kind of do that all in the same go these days, but yeah.
So it's kind of a Star Wars week, right? We started off. It was May the 4th be with you, right? We just
May
had
the 4th
that,
be with you.
And then yeah, thank you. And Revenge of the 5th, right? Not sure the 6th and the 7th, since today it is the 7th, right?
Revenge of the 6th.
Is it Revenge of the 6th too? I don't know.
I don't know. I made that up.
I was trying to think of some earlier today too, but I decided not to try to rattle my brain because I was busy with other things. But yeah, kind of very fitting. I don't know. Just recently, I don't know if you saw I know it's been around for a little bit, but George Lucas is going to be opening up his Star Wars museum. Did you see that?
He did not.
I think it's like sometime in September.
Is it going to be at his big farm thing, or is it going to be?
I think it is out in California. There's pictures online.
You maybe Skywalker Ranch, I think he calls it.
It's pretty wild. It's pretty wild looking. I honestly would like to go. Not to go down the road of Star Wars just yet. And yes, we will be talking a lot about Star Wars, probably just about every episode that we do.
It's hard. I'd say for me, that was my gateway drug into science fiction and fantasy, because it's really is both.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and so Mike, on that point, just for everybody who's eventually hopefully going to listen. Right now, we're just probably, maybe one person's listening, but for those that will hopefully tune into this episode someday, how did you come to be the as far as I'm concerned, the sci-fi guru, science nerd that you are today?
Yeah, I think it started with actually a little bit before Star Wars, which was my dad was a big Star Trek, the original series fan.
Yeah.
And today we have, whole channels that'll play marathons of whatever show you want to watch. Right. But back in the day, when there was only like 4 channels broadcast TV, it was a big deal when one of those channels would take a whole weekend and just stream one show or broadcast one show. But we had what came to be known probably as the Fox affiliates, but they weren't called that back then.
Yeah.
There was always this kind of 4th channel but they would play Star Trek for an entire weekend.
Oh.
And my dad and I would just plant ourselves on the couch and watch as much of it as we could while we could stay awake.
Awesome.
And that was a real bonding time between him and I. And so that was the first thing. And then when I was little, I was really little, that original series was scary when you're that little.
Yeah.
Because even though today it looks super super old fashioned and hokey, the makeup and the rubber suits and stuff like that.
It was
If you're
original
like,
though. Yeah.
yeah, if you're like 5 years old, you know, the Gorn is really scary.
Yeah.
So Star Trek and then Star Wars really opened it up because
Okay.
it was the first time, even when, I mean, I was little, I don't know, was 7 or 8 or something. It was the first time you saw something that looked real. And that's what I regret about all the generations since then, is that
Yeah.
you didn't grow up watching TV and movies that did not look real.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you did if it was something like a Western or something, because that's real. But
Right.
if you'd watch science fiction, even if it was Star Trek, you had to suspend disbelief, because if you didn't, it was obviously models and sets set with plastic rocks or styrofoam rocks and stuff.
Right.
But Star Wars, from the very beginning, with that carrier
Yes.
going over you, or
Yeah.
the Star Destroyer, it was like, oh my God, this I feel like I'm in space watching a space battle. It
Yeah.
was revelatory. And
Yeah.
no one, the later generations cannot understand what it's like to see something in science fiction or fantasy that looks like the real thing. Or Jurassic Park did the same thing for dinosaurs.
Yes. No. I totally agree with you on that one. Yeah, I totally agree. I still think to this day, even watching the Jurassic Park films that are, I think the storylines are decent, right? They all seem to kind of follow the same pattern, but they're still decent, right? You still go back to the very first Jurassic Park. When I remember my aunt took my sister and I, and we went to the movie theater and saw it, and I was just blown away by it. I still think it was revolutionary as well. The animatronics, how amazing and how real. I just remember the hype. It was like dinosaurs, they were real again.
Yeah.
So I totally agree with you on that. I think Star Wars definitely did the same thing. Now, interestingly enough, going back and watching them now on the new platforms that they're available on, you can see things that just basic film just didn't reveal, and that's what made, I think, film so beautiful, like the actual film strip. But
Yes.
that,
Yeah.
that's awesome to hear. I mean, I think that's pretty cool to hear. I don't have the exact same, but I kind of have the same thing as well. My upbringing, right? I mean, Generation X for sure grew up, 80s and 90s, the two best generations for everything, man. Television, music, movies. There were just directors and producers and conductors, and that they're still doing stuff today that to me is groundbreaking. But the fact that they were doing things with the lack of with the technology that they had back then is still incredible, and those soundtracks still resonate with me. But yeah, Star Wars was it for me, for sure. As a kid, I had the toys for Christmas. Every once in a while I'd get a new toy. Didn't have too much. We didn't have a lot of money growing up, but Santa Claus was always good to us, and so I had a few toys. I inherited a few toys from my cousin, some Star Wars toys that he just outgrew. So Star Wars was definitely big for me. But interestingly enough, you talk about watching Star Trek with your father. See, I have very fond memories of Star Trek: The Next Generation. So when I was a toddler, when I was growing up, I used to come downstairs, after, whatever I was doing, finishing up some homework or whatnot as a little kid, say toddler. I was a little kid. And yeah, I remember those nights that Star Trek: The Next Generation was on, a new episode was on. And I used to just sit down and hang out with my dad and watch it. Those still, even the theme song, when you hear it, it automatically takes me back to those days of my childhood automatically. So it's incredible. So it's little moments like that I realized that those types of things are so meaningful to me, that take me to those places. And I utilize it. I think that's why I am who I am today, because, music, movies, certain sounds, certain sights, certain smells. I mean, you name it, it brings that nostalgia to you. And it's important. I think it's important for everybody to have something like that in their lives. I just think, being a child growing up in the 80s and through the 90s, it's just such a special thing.
Yeah. We're both Gen X. I'm on born earlier side of Gen X, and you're on the born later side of Gen X.
Yeah, later side. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, but we still, I think there are a lot of similarities to that generation. because I consider the 80s and 90s my music as well, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
So
it's fun. It's fun to go back to that music. I mean, today, and I'm not insulting anything today, because I mean, every generation and every decade has its, you know, everything that's special to it. And I'm not saying that I don't listen to anything that is produced or made today, but I still just don't, I just can't find anything, not that I can relate to, but anything that touches me like it does, like the 80s music did, you know, when or 90s music did. It just it has a different meaning. And still today, it's just great to hop in the car and to you know, put it on and just listen to it, and just take you back, and just some of the feelings. I mean, I don't know, it's some songs you just can't stop listening to.
yeah, well, we should sometime we should do a show where we talk about, this is a kind of a passionate thing of mine, which is why it was that even starting in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, 80s, and 90s, why it was that those why those musicians were able to make such groundbreaking music. And there's a reason for it, and it has to do with science and technology. Because that was constantly changing, that forced creators to change the way they recorded their music and the tools available in the studio. But once you hit the 2000s, nothing really new has changed technology-wise. Yeah, things have become easier. Hard drives are bigger. Computers are faster. So all those things we used to be able to do in the 90s, because I was recording music in the 90s, I can do in 1 minute what took me 30 minutes to do in 1990.
Yeah.
But because I don't have to sit and wait for audio to compile for 20 minutes.
Right.
But there's nothing new that revolutionizes how the tools we have to make music. The last new thing that I can think of, honestly, that really fundamentally changed everything was the the pitch correction technology, which today we just call it, what do we call it? I should know this.
Auto-tune, right? Is that auto-tune? Yeah.
And that was, I'd say, the last new song that sounded new with something different in it was Cher, Believe.
Yeah.
Which was like the song that popularized autotune, which, by the way, has lots of ELO samples in it that nobody knows about except me, Electric Light Orchestra.
Oh, I love ELO. Yeah, yeah.
Whoever produced that song was a huge ELO fan. But
might have been somebody from the group.
Well, the beginning of that song samples a song from the Electric Light Orchestra's Time album. And then there are, I don't know if it's samples or they recreated some of the guitar sound parts in it. But anyway.
Awesome.
But nothing's changed since then. So if you listen to a song from a pop artist, say Madonna from the 90s, and yes, she was always recording music no matter what decade you're talking about.
And incredible, by the way, still her music.
If you listen to a single from Madonna from the 1990s, there's nothing fundamentally different about that pop music than if you listen to Dua Lipa today.
Yeah.
Except that really what Dua Lipa is doing is just updating disco.
Yeah.
She's Donna Summer of the 2000s.
Well, there definitely is there's a repetitive element, you know. There just really is. It's similar to, but so, you know, I'll take a little sidestep down on the hip hop side, right? I mean, you go back to the Motown years, right? All of that amazing, which I thank my father for getting me into that, because, you know, Motown, all of that.
Motown's amazing. Yeah.
But then the hip hoppers, you know, as you said, technology started to change, right? We had record players, but then all of a sudden there became drum machines and then samplers. And then the hip hop, you know, talent just started running with that. So they would take records and they would they would record samples on a 4-track recorder or something.
Yeah.
And they were taking jazz cuts or samples. They were taking Motown samples and they were putting it into their rap music. Talk about incredible. I mean, that,
Yeah,
and I think that's why I fell in love with 80s rap, 80s hip hop, even into the 90s. You know, I still liked gangster rap. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I just grew up in that time where still, I think one of the best rap albums ever, The Chronic. I know everybody, oh yeah, of course you're going to say that, but it's the truth. It really was one of the most amazing rap albums ever, you know,
so going
ever
back,
developed.
I was into DJ Jazzy Jeff
Yes. Oh
and the
yeah. Yeah.
Fresh Prince. So let's just establish right now which
Okay.
one of us is the DJ, which one of us is the rapper.
He's the DJ. I'm the rapper. No, that's to me, that's
Down
their
with
best
that.
album, by the way.
Yeah.
DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. He's the DJ. I'm the rapper. Is their best album, and that is one of
Agreed.
those albums. At least the A side, you can play every song on that side. Every track is a monster. Every track. I mean, besides Nightmare on My Street, Parents Just Don't Understand. There were so many other tracks on that. They're just fantastic. So one of my first albums that I had. I'm going to take it a step back though. I was a huge Kid and Play fan. I don't know if you remember or know who Kid and Play
I
was.
don't remember. Yeah.
So look, I grew up in a family who my mom and my dad were. They still are. They were dancers. They danced, right? They were, whenever music was playing, those two would be out on the dance floor dancing, right? So I came from a family that danced. So, and naturally, you know, you kind of adapt and you learn to understand and hear rhythm, and, you know, just, you can become a dancer as well. So,
well,
that was
as
one thing.
Gloria Stefan said, the rhythm is going to get you.
It is going to get you. Rhythm is a dancer. 90s EDM. No, they're, so because of that, you know, Kid and Play was amazing to me, because Kid and Play was, you know, they were this awesome rap duo, and their raps they had some great lyrics, and their beats were amazing. That's what drew me in, but they were also dancers, right? They even coined their own dance. They had the Kid and Play kick step, and it was actually featured in one of their movies, their original first movie called House Party. So these are the types of this is what I was growing up with. So hip hop was fun. Rap music was fun. They were telling stories, even if they were dark stories. Like I said, you get into the gangster rap stuff, and they were telling, like, I mean, maybe they weren't dark, but they weren't pleasant, fun. You know, they were tales of what they grew up with, what they were facing, what they were struggling with, and how they overcame it, or how they were fighting back. I mean, so you had those stories, which I think were all relevant. I know they were all relevant. But then you also had the other side, the playful side. You had the Kid and Play. You had the DJ Jazzy Jeff. And then you had this middle ground, which to me, I think they originally started out as what we would call battle rappers. And I think eventually that's where the East Coast and the West Coast stuff came into play, right? East Coast rap, West Coast rap. But you had, which were still some of my all-time favorites, you had, you know, on the West Coast, you had Too Short. It's probably one of my favorites, you know, besides the NWA crew, right? Besides Ice Cube and Eazy-E and Dr. Dre. But then you go to the New York side, right? You go to the East Coast, and you have Nas, and you have A Tribe Called Quest, and you have all these other guys that are like, they're battle rappers. And that was awesome, because they were still taking the technology, right? They were doing the sampling. As a matter of fact, Tribe Called Quest was most notorious for, jazz, and hip hop. And just go listen to the Low End Theory. Holy cow. I mean, amazing, just amazing records. But anyways, I think I'm just trying to explain, I guess, the dynamics of the music that we had growing up. I mean, we were still in one genre, right? But there were different forms of it. And it was all because, like you were mentioning earlier, is because the availability of the technology. And what was so cool was, I think each one of them were taking that technology and making it their own, and they were pushing it to their own limits. And I think that's what made their album so amazing. It's funny that you listen to some of those rappers now, because, you know, they're still around, and no offense to them, you know, they've you know, solidified their place in history, but it doesn't sound the same anymore. It doesn't sound the same, because I think you're right. I think we've reached a point where the technology has kind of, it's stagnant now. It just hasn't, you know, it's something.
It keeps getting faster, and that's about it.
Yeah, that's it. So their music, like Eric B and Rakim, right? Rakim is still out there. He's doing stuff, but I still listen to his old stuff. I can't. I mean, his new stuff. I don't feel it like I feel his old stuff.
You start well, and I got into. I never was into rap and hip hop as much as a lot of people were, but to the extent that I was, I got my doorway was actually through white rock and roll, which because that's the first time I heard it, and so you could say that's cultural appropriation, but really what was happening is, say, Deborah Harry and Blondie, they were from New York, and they were in those clubs listening to those real rappers and DJs spinning those records.
Yeah.
And so Deborah Harry just took that and put it in one of her pop songs with Blondie, you know. That Five Freddy told me everybody's fly, DJ spinning. I said in my mind, you know. And the song Rapture is sometimes considered the first popular rap song, although Run DMC would differ. And they would say it was Walk This Way by Aerosmith.
Right.
Which they then paid tribute to by having Steven Tyler and you know, and I can't, my mind's not working tonight. The guitar player from Aerosmith come on their album and re-record Walk This Way, which actually in some ways I like a little bit better than the original. But
so do I, right?
Yeah.
Because it was an awesome collaboration, right? And I can't say that was like the very first collaboration, obviously, but probably one of the most, you know, influential, memorable ones that I think inspired many of the collaborations that we have today, you know, all the way up to today from when that happened. So.
Yeah. And well, you know, and we are going to talk about TVs and movies. So I want to give a little bit of preview on that before we wrap up this discussion. The most popular science fiction TV show in a long while, and maybe one of the most popular shows this year, was a show called Pluribus, so when I rank my favorite shows of all time, it goes like this, and there's a bunch of them, but it starts with The X-Files as my all-time favorite TV show.
Yeah. And
then number 2 would be a show called Better Call Saul, which is not science fiction at all.
Yep.
And then I'd say number 3, I'd probably put in there Battlestar Galactica Reimagined.
I was just going to say.
Probably.
It has to be.
But what do the first 2 have in common? They're both made by a guy named Vince Gilligan. I know the X-Files, the showrunner was Chris Carter. Vince Gilligan started in season 2 and rose in ranks to become one of the most prolific writers of the X-Files. So if you go back and look at the writing credits, he wrote a lot of the X-Files. And so some of the very best episodes are written by him. And then Darren Morgan and David Duchovny wrote the best ones. But Pluribus, I've watched so many reviews and breakdowns of all those, and there's been all these internet theories and everything. But we're scientists, and I've got a scientific theory that explains everything that happens in Pluribus that I've not heard anywhere else.
Okay,
so I want to talk about that later.
Before you go into that, if you want, you're gonna have to give me a back, because I don't know anything about this show. Because I try to watch as much TV as I can. I know that sounds terrible, which isn't a lot, by the way, because I'm busy and I have other stuff to do. But that's one show I have not watched. I have heard stories, but I know nothing about it. For anybody out there, you know, if you're worried about spoilers or whatnot, you probably don't want to listen in. But so at some point in time, I give me a little premise, give me some background on what this series is about.
Yeah, so spoilers for Pluribus.
I'm interested.
So the idea is there's a woman, just a everyday average woman. Well, I mean, she's an author. She writes romance novels. Okay. And she's played by Ray Seahorn, who was one of the 3 or 4 main cast members of Better Call Saul. And after that show was over, like most of the fans of Better Call Saul, was this actress needs her own show. And so Vince Gilligan gave her one. I'm so glad he did. So she's a romance novelist And basically, she wishes she could be a serious author, but this is where she makes money. She makes money and so she goes to all these like bookstores where she does book signings, and all the ladies who read the romance novels come up and tell her how much they love her work, and she signs her stuff. But she basically feels like she's a sellout, and she drinks too much to try to deal with that.
Yeah.
And so, but what happens is at the same time that's happening in the pilot episode, scientists receive a message from outer space, which is soon to be, they figure out it's from intelligent life.
Okay.
And that it's a code, and it turns out to be a genetic code.
Okay.
And so scientists then, they said, well, we need to create the proteins, because you always do the dumbest thing possible.
But of course.
Yeah.
I mean, what are you supposed to do? We just received something in a gift basket. Just leave it alone and walk away from it.
Yeah. So they receive a genetic code, so they start working diligently to recreate whatever the genetic code specifies. And so far, by the way, one of my favorite science fiction movies of all time, definitely top 5, is a movie called Contact with Jodie Foster. I was just going
to say, that's what this is taking me down.
So
but I want to continue.
There's very clear influence from Contact here. There's no way Vince Gilligan hasn't seen Contact. And so you receive a code, whereas in Contact, they built a ship that, spoilers for Contact from 1990 something. They built a ship that takes them through wormholes, basically.
Okay.
And they meet an alien race of higher technology. So,
okay.
But this one, they receive genetic code, they build it, and it turns out to be a virus. Because of course it turns out to be a virus.
Yeah.
And then it infects everybody through basically it infects through bodily fluids. But interestingly, the way that it turns people, they don't use the word zombie, I don't think. But they turn people into zombies, but not the zombies that anyone's ever seen before.
Okay.
So these aren't the decaying corpses. They're not dead. They're not undead, first of all.
Okay. Yeah.
It just takes living people and hijacks their brain, which is actually what real zombie viruses do. There's a lot of good science in this.
Like a lot of necrosis, tissue necrosis and all that stuff.
Well, no necrosis, but no, like I'm talking about like the zombie viruses that like ants get infected by that hijack their brain.
Okay.
So that they climb to the top of trees and then basically explode, raining down more virus on the ants below, who then get infected. So it's just a way to keep replicating the virus. But the ants are alive. It's just their brain's been hijacked. There's no decay at all.
Okay.
So that's the way this is. A human's brain has been hijacked, but they don't look like zombies. So, and they have intelligence, but it's a group hive mind kind of intelligence. Okay. And so when you meet one of the infected, they look just like your coworker or your family member, and they talk to you, and except they're super, you could call it the happiness virus. Everybody seems super happy who's infected with it, and they want you to join their happiness collective, basically.
Okay.
And the way they spread it is by grabbing you and kissing you.
Really? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Sounds okay. I mean, I'm still listening, but all right.
There's bodily fluids, right? Okay, so instead of sneezes, whatever, they grab you and kiss you, and then you fall to the floor, you start to convulse, and then you come out of it. It either kills you, or you come back. You're infected now, and you're part of the collective hive mind.
Jeez. Okay.
Okay. So what Carol, who's the protagonist, it's also a kind of a parody on on breakout movies, like movies about viral breakouts and movies of disaster movies.
World War Z kind of thing.
Because what always happens in those movies is like there'll be a few people who aren't infected yet, but they like always find like survivors who are like a scientist and a military leader, and like these guys, like, I mean, even Walking Dead had that. They had difference. I mean, Rick was a leader because he was a sheriff and blah, blah, blah. And so Carol, there's only 12 people in the world who aren't infected.
Right.
And she gets most of them together, or a lot of them together, and none of them are experts in anything. It's just 12 random people. And she's like, we gotta solve this. Nobody has a clue.
No, nobody knows what to do. It's like that's a good. It's about time that somebody just puts like a random subset of people in there that are just randos.
Yeah, there's no biologists, no scientists.
Okay,
just like random people from all over the world. So she can't understand most of them. However, the friendly zombies are more than happy to interpret, because these 12 people are immune.
Okay.
But so the zombies, who are not called zombies in the show, the happy zombies then go about on their mission to create perfect paradise world for each one of the 12 people. Whatever they want, they can have. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And so Carol doesn't want anything to do with it, so she tells them to leave her alone.
Yeah.
And so the other ones, most of the rest of the people are indifferent about it. And one guy who's hilarious lives it up, man. He asks for whatever you ask for, they'll give it to you. Okay. So he asks for Air Force One to fly around the world. And like anybody, there's a collective hive mind. So when you look at the pilot flying the plane, it might be an 8-year-old girl.
Yeah.
Because they all have exactly the same mind, and they have all the intelligence of all the humans who they took over.
That is bizarre.
So they can just access the best pilot's memory and fly the plane.
That is crazy.
So people are doing that you wouldn't expect, are doing all kinds of different things. But so this guy asked for Air Force One. He lives in a penthouse at the top of, in Vegas.
Yeah.
He's living it up. He's got, and all these, he's got a harem of
what's the price to pay
infected.
There has to be what's the catch?
The catch is that, this is echoes of an old Twilight Zone episode.
Yeah.
Which is, there's an episode where basically an angel shows up and gives somebody everything they ever wanted.
Right.
It was a guy who'd robbed a bank or something. And so there's no challenge at all.
Right.
There's no challenges in life. And that's one of the catches. But Carol finds out that the aliens, which they're basically aliens inhabiting human mind.
Right.
She finds out they're assembling a telescope to send out the message again.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So it spreads from world to world.
Yeah.
By the mind recreating a giant telescope to send out the message to another world. It's replication. So does that explain it? What other questions do you have?
Yeah, no, I'm totally tracking with this. I mean, it makes sense from a sci-fi perspective for sure, based off of my historical knowledge of sci-fi, since I'm a fan. So yeah, I'm tracking.
Yeah. So you want to hear my take on it?
Give me and the audience some of the working theories right now, then share yours, because I'm curious to know what their thought is. Because is this series over, by the way? Is it completed?
No, there's going to be at least 3 seasons and maybe 5.
Okay. Where are we at right now? What season?
Season 1 is over.
Okay, so we just had 1. Okay.
Yeah. And so I won't spoil the very ending because it's amazing. The very last shot of season 1 is amazeballs. So,
Okay. It's fair.
So, but other theory. So I haven't kept up on much after the show ended, but people were coming up with all sorts of things. Even there was an interesting theory that I hope is correct, but I doubt is, which is that this is a sequel to one of the Twilight Zone episodes from the 60s.
Okay.
Because there was an episode with her last name, Carol's last name is Sturka.
Yeah.
And there was an episode of the Twilight Zone where there was a scientist named Sturka who was working on a spaceship. And you think it's Earth throughout most of the show. And there's going to be a doomsday. There's going to be like nuclear bombs. And there's this spaceship he's been working on. And he finds out that basically they're going to start World War III tomorrow. So he smuggles his family and another friend and his family onto this spaceship, and they escape, and we find out it's another world.
Oh.
It's not the Earth.
Okay.
So there's a theory that Sturka is the ancestor who came to Earth of Carol Sturka.
Okay, that'd be cool.
Now, I think it would be cool, and I hope it's true, but I'm trying not to get my hopes up because I'm a huge Twilight Zone fan. But my guess is that Vince Gilligan was just watching that episode and he thought, I'm going to pay homage to this episode and call my character Sturka.
So real quick, before you go on to your theory, just from my understanding, and maybe those listening, the idea behind this is we're only one season in, and people are trying to predict where this is going to go, like which is what makes these types of shows so much fun, which is why I think I love sci-fi and adventure, because you're always wanting to come back for more, because you have ideas, because it inspires ideas of where you want things to go or what you're hoping to see. But you're also looking forward to what the creators have actually thought up and have completed in their entire mythology. And you can't wait to see it unfold. So anyways, I just wanted to say that's where we're going in this direction right
now. So most of the theories that I've seen, online, that's where you find your theories, is why the aliens are doing it. What is their end game?
Their motivation. Okay?
So
it's a virus to propagate, but it's not really.
So as scientists, though, you and I, that theory makes obvious sense to us because we're both, among other things, biologists. And the only thing that's the number one prerogative of life is to multiply, right?
Procreate. Yeah.
So that's obvious to us, but I don't think it's obvious to everybody.
Is that the prime directive?
It's the prime directive. So that's obviously one that, is that one's blatant. They're obviously doing that.
Right.
And then other ideas are that there's a slow starvation, that the hive mind is, so they don't kill anything. They believe that every life is sacred, including like a blade of grass. So they will not, they only consume resources that have already been made by humans.
Okay.
So, which plays a huge part of it later, but they will, like, if I recall, they will like eat and drink things that are products of living things after they fall from a tree. Like, but they wouldn't pick an apple from a tree. They would wait until it drops and then eat it.
Interesting. Okay.
And
that's
so
that's fun. Yeah.
They won't kill insects, anything. So there's a major theory, probably the major theory, is that they're trying to starve out all the humans on Earth, so they can come and take over the Earth without any opposition.
Okay.
I'd say that's the most popular theory.
Okay.
I don't agree with it, but that's the most popular one. Then there's a theory that they're terraforming the world. For a lot of it has to do with aliens arriving on Earth physically. I'm not certain that that's ever going to happen in this show, but that they're terraforming the world. Okay.
Yeah, they're preparing for their actual overlords to come and to be able to populate without any resistance.
Yeah.
I get that. Okay, that's old sci-fi theory. Okay, that story's been
theories. Yeah, and there are theories about why the immune are immune. Some of them are really bad theories. I think like there's a theory out there that the reason Carol is immune is because she's an alcoholic. Well, there are millions of alcoholics around the world, so you'd think that more than 12 people would have survived.
Okay.
You know.
That's okay. That one.
So that's why I think that's a ridiculous theory, because it doesn't track the data. Otherwise, it would be fine. There's theories about basically why the aliens want to take over humans, and how they become a hive mind. What is the cause, or what is the unifying theory that allows the hive mind to exist?
Yeah.
And that they've kind of they're definitely unraveling that as the show goes on, because they're talking about, because basically there's one character, a very important character in it, who's basically the only other survivor who wasn't infected, and he has to come up from South America, basically, which is a whole big deal. But his big deal is that he's the only other person on Earth that's trying to fight this along with Carol. So he eventually unites with her.
Okay.
And then they get into big arguments about how they should fight it and why.
Well, there has to be. Yeah, I was going to say there has to be some resistance, right? I mean, because what else would there be to continue the show if there wasn't any resistance?
Well, his basic take on it is everybody who's infected is lost. Our relatives and friends are no longer in there. We should just kill everybody. And Carol is like, no, my loved ones are in there, and we need to rescue them and cure them.
All right.
And so that's the friction there. So there's theories about how you become infected. Some people believe that you have to consent. The aliens tell Carol that she has to consent if she decides she wants to be infected. But they certainly didn't ask for consent when they went up and kissed people. So, but so the hive mind is working diligently to create. Carol discovers through her own research that the aliens are working on a vaccine, if you will, to take away her immunity.
Oh, geez. What
else? So in
else?
storytelling, we call that a ticking clock, where you have to beat a deadline.
Yes.
And they tell her that she asks how long. Oh, and another big part of the show is that there's the aliens send. So the aliens send a person who looks exactly like a woman from Carol's book, who was, or at least, how do I explain this? So Carol is gay, but she doesn't want anybody to know that. So in her romance novels, there's always a not normal, that's the wrong word, but a heterosexual relationship between the protagonists. Whereas originally she had written a book where it was a same-sex relationship, and and the book company's like, no, we're not going to publish that. So she switched it to male female.
Okay.
Heteronormal was the word I was looking for, even though we all understand that there's not normal or abnormal. But so she had originally had a female heroine in there who was the love interest.
Okay.
And then they changed it to a male, but they basically kept the facial structures the same. So they send an alien infected person who looks exactly like that person, her original ideal girlfriend.
And to try to obviously persuade her to join the dark side.
Yeah, to try to persuade her to come over. And she's super nice. And so eventually Carol falls in love with her.
Of course.
And so that creates a problem as well, almost to the point where Carol doesn't want to fight it anymore. But then she comes to her senses at the end of because she realizes that this person is putting on an act. It's not a real it's not a real personality. It's the aliens constructing this fictionalized person from her book.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, it was a smart play by them, but humans usually, we can push through on these types of things.
So, but here's the deal. Here's what I've not seen anybody put up anywhere.
Yeah. What is your take on this? Because it's pretty interesting. I mean, I have some thoughts, but go ahead.
So, my thought is that this is very simply exactly how a virus hijacks a cell, except in this case, the world is a cell.
Okay.
That's my theory. So the world is a cell, and what normally happens with viral replication is that you've got a cell, you've got the virus that comes into the cell from somewhere else,
right?
Outer space in this case. It comes in and hijacks the cellular machinery, which in our cells would be things like Golgi complex, and not that anybody needs to know this, but ribosomes and endoplasmic reticulum and the nucleus.
Right.
But instead of all those things, they're hijacking the machinery of the Earth as a cell, which is going to be labs and scientific, observatories and factories. Okay.
Yeah.
But there's really not a fundamental difference philosophically, because I taught for many, many years. I taught biology in a university, and I always used the cell as a factory as an analogy to explain.
It is.
And so the Earth is a cell, and the virus infects the cell, gets it to recreate the virus, and then moves on to another planet.
Yeah.
To me, it's very simple. And I think people are looking too hard for a deeper meaning when this really comes down to science.
I mean, it sounds very interesting. That would be a concept that I have not heard in sci-fi at all through the history of the sci-fi that I am privy to. So very
it goes back to your basic biology, which, you go back to your majors biology course.
Yeah.
Do you remember learning about Lynn Margulis's Gaia theory, Gaia hypothesis?
Yes.
Which basically, the hypothesis is that the entire Earth is an organism.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And so this is basically science fiction that's taking that and saying, okay, the world is an organism, let's infect it. And then the virus tries to replicate and move on.
Yeah.
So that's my Pluribus Gaia hypothesis.
Which it is interesting though to think about it, because then you have to think about all the other mechanisms that are a part of biology, right? And anatomy in itself. So in the end here, what happens? Where does this go? Does
the cell dies?
Does the cell die? Or are there components that are able to overcome the virus, destroy the virus, or make the virus incapable of doing what it's doing, of fulfilling its prime directive to survive, basically, and the Earth survives? I mean, that ought to be an interesting way it plays out, if it plays out that way. You'll have to keep me posted, because
Well,
Pretty
I'll
neat.
probably have to wait another year and a half before they air the next season, but I'm just putting that out there. But let's
That's
talk
good.
about some science
Yeah.
fiction narratives. So
Yeah.
there's a show that you and I both watched in the 90s called
Oh
Stargate.
man. Yeah. Yeah. I was just thinking about that because when you said wormholes, I thought, probably one of the best and the most theoretically accurate, story that involved wormhole technology was probably Stargate, in my opinion.
There's
It
another
started
one
with the
called Farscape that everybody should watch, but
right.
go
No, no,
on.
no. I agree. I agree. I
Yeah.
know that show, but if you really want, if you want the science and there were some great characters within that series that were, I loved it because they brought that element of always explaining the theories into whether it was truth or, still scientific, plausible, or it was truth. I love that. I mean, Dr. Samantha Carter was amazing. That's what I loved about her character. She was always like, telling the obvious to everybody, but it was so scientifically, literate, it was so scientifically intelligent. It's like, it was obvious to her, but to everybody else was like, like,
Sam, can you explain that to me in English, please?
exactly. But no, absolutely love that. So, fell in love the moment I saw that movie. And what were we talking? Like, was that early 90s? Was that late 80s? It was an amazing movie.
Yeah, that come out. I'll look it up here.
So for any type of sci-fi person, into spaceships and into, I don't know, just adventure stories, those types of things. This had both to me. This had both elements. It had the sci-fi piece and it also had
94.
action. 94. Okay. It had the sci-fi piece, but it also had all this action adventure. And then just throw in some historical stuff, which was cool. In this case, in Stargate, it was ancient Egypt, I think was really one of their main, sections of the storyline, or the main pieces of the storyline. Turned out to go way beyond that once the series started, but it all started from that movie. And it was a great movie.
And it was a direct sequel to the movie.
Yeah. The SG1.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it literally, because of the movie, the technology didn't go away. So they established a team, a military science-based team. And of course, including, someone not from this world, from our world, that happened to come over and be a part of the team. So we call him an alien. Yeah, Teal'c. But I mean, we call him an alien, but I don't know if he really was an alien technically.
Well, no, because Stargate solved one of the problems of science fiction.
Yeah,
that's always been around. And
yeah,
and really, Asimov was the first one to do this. That's a whole other thing. There's a great the best Asimov adaptation ever. It's a show called Foundation on Apple TV. Watch it.
Yeah. Heard about that one too. I haven't seen it.
It's amazing. But so they solved a problem, which is the problem is, and Star Trek kind of has this problem, is that everywhere you go, you run into people who look like humans. So that doesn't make sense biologically speaking. It makes sense that there would be similarities because of something called coevolution, but or that's a whole other thing. But it doesn't make sense that everybody be exactly like humans. And so, but Stargate solves this by the fact that you had these aliens who, if you look, if you know what the gold really look like, they don't look anything like humans.
No, they don't at all.
Who infect humans, basically. They become parasites on humans.
That's what they were.
They use the human's physiology and humanoid body to create tools, basically, to spread throughout the galaxy or the universe, maybe. And so when you go encounter, when the Stargate SG-1 team, there's lots of teams, but the main was the SG-1. When they go to another world, everybody looks human because they are human.
Right.
And there are some legit aliens like the Asgardians, but
but
it makes sense.
Which expanded the world, in my opinion, when they brought the Asgardians in, which were awesome. And then we went way off the reservation when we got towards the last seasons and we got to the Ori and all that, which, I didn't lose interest. I stayed with it, but I thought that story was overdone and it was a lot and a little, if that makes sense. So it was a lot that they could have built on and expanded on, but it was very, very, they didn't have enough time, I think, because I think they were losing momentum. I personally loved the original, the way they started the series out. I personally loved that. It was strictly based on, they're a team of people. They're going and they're doing exploring, similar to Star Trek, right? Star Trek, they were out in space, going to different areas and basically essentially surveying areas, but they would always encounter problems and issues or things that they needed to intervene and maybe potentially help, even though there was the prime directive, but I digress. But I really enjoyed that about Stargate because there was always some sort of a cool adventure, but then they would always bring you back to the actual story arc, which had to do with the Goa'uld and all of that stuff, which was another awesome story within itself. But I love that. And then they did bring in the Asgardians, which I thought was cool because then the Asgardians turned out to be, a race that had actually been dealing with the Goa'uld for XYZ amount of years, for whatever their timeline was, their time frame was. And it just made it made for a really great story for at least eight seasons. I mean, 8 seasons, and we're talking 15, close to 20 episodes, I think, a season. It was good TV, man.
I think it's more like 20 or 22.
Yeah, it was. That was back in the day when they would do mid-season finales. They'd break for a couple months, and then we would come back and get the rest of the season and the rest of the year.
You'd watch the reruns in between.
Exactly.
And then, everything changed because of streaming. And what happened with streaming is that the reason we only have 6 to 10 episodes now is because streaming doesn't care about developing a show and having it last forever like network TV did.
Yeah.
They only want to build up a show long enough to get people to sign up to Netflix or Disney Plus or whatever.
Yeah.
And then they don't care about that show anymore. And so they'll do 6 to 10 episode seasons and then don't renew it after 2 or 3 seasons if they get that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know that's another road to venture down, and, maybe we dive into that, at some other time. Cause that is a lot to unpack when it comes to that. Cause I do believe that there's a lot of truth to that. It does frustrate me that we are only, if you do think about it, we really are only getting 6, maybe 8 episodes in a season. I've also heard, though, that because it's so expensive now, because of the things that they need to do to produce an episode, that they can only really budget or afford to do, 6 episodes, 8 episodes. And that's, I get it. But at the same time, we all have to budget. We all have to do things. And if you have a good story, do you know what I mean? You either sell it to get the budget to do the story that you believe in, that you love, or you put out crap. I mean, that's just how I look at it. Yeah. So, do the best that you can. I mean, and I know something else we'll talk about maybe some other time, another story, but, about, you and your, adventure on, writing screenplays. We've got a couple under our belt and we're working on more, and, there's just something to it. But just for everybody's sake, we believe in the stories that we're writing, and we're not looking to do this for any other reason other than to share it with everybody, because we believe that this story needs to be shared with people. And that's how I want people to, to feel when they see it, that they're not being sold anything. They're being invited to join into our world. And that's, so putting that aside, though, on the Stargate piece, back to Stargate, I think it was still one of the greatest series that has been produced out there. There is one that I would put above that, and I know you mentioned it earlier, Battlestar Galactica, the remake. The original series was fun, but boy, whenever they did that to me laid down the foundation of how a sci-fi show should be written, how it should be, put together, how it should be produced. I mean, that if you have not seen Battlestar Galactica, I guarantee you watch that 4-hour pilot episode. I mean, I think they did it in 2 parts, if I'm not mistaken. That is hands down one of the most.
There was a mini series.
It draws you in.
I think a 3-part miniseries, if I recall.
it drew me in. Now, tell me what you thought, but it drew me in so much.
Oh yeah.
You were with it until the very, very last episode, and the
That,
very last episode was
oh yeah.
amazing. It was amazing.
That opening
Usually we get
scene,
disappointed. Yeah. Usually we get disappointed by finales. This one was like, oh my gosh, how incredible! What an incredible way to end this series. It was amazing. It was amazing.
I'm with you. Some people hated the finale. I loved it. I thought
Are you kidding me?
I thought it was the best finale I'd probably ever seen up to that point.
One of the most well thought out. Like I truly believe they knew exactly how they wanted to end it, and they had to find a way to get there. That's how that show became so amazing. That's how I believe it. So
yeah, no, I think that some people hated it because they couldn't wrap their minds around what was happening with Baltar and Six at the end, like what their god. I mean, if you follow the whole series, the whole point was that they had the resurrection ship where after they consciousness die, they get uploaded into this resurrection ship. This is simply the higher, this is the consciousness of these two people.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it didn't bother me at all. I thought it was a natural conclusion. Yeah, the Battlestar changed everything about science fiction in a way. And I'll say also, there's another show that kind of did a similar thing along the same lines, but it just never got renewed or anything, which was Firefly. That's a whole other thing.
Oh man, we'll have to do a whole episode of the mini worlds on that, because that one.
But they both did something similar, which was they really said, okay, let's take human drama and infuse human drama and emotion into these science fiction stories to the nth level, turn it up to 11. And they did. I mean, but you're right, drawn in. I can't watch the first 5 minutes of the Battlestar miniseries because I know I'm hooked for the next 4 seasons plus the miniseries. But when you have that diplomat on that space station and Six walks in,
I know.
I'm out. I'm in. I mean, you've got me.
Look,
that's
incredible. I can't say enough. Starbuck, right?
Oh yeah.
She Katie Sackhoff. She was one of the coolest characters in that show. And if you want any other proof of how amazing that show was, she was a nobody actress, from my understanding. I don't know. I couldn't name anything. She went to that show. Now she's one of the most favorite characters in the Star Wars franchise now.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And it's a part of the Mandalorian stuff. It's unbelievable. So it's unbelievable. And to see a lot of other actors from that series go on to do other stuff was it's just
Katie's been in lots of cool superhero science fiction stuff. She played a villain in I don't know if you ever watched the Arrowverse on CW, all those superhero shows.
My dad was into that. He's told me about it. I haven't jumped into that, but my dad's seen all of it. Yeah,
it was up to that point the best DC content ever filmed, I think. But Battlestar, the guy who ran it, Ronald D. Moore, he's from Next Generation. He was a writer on Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
And so he's got the bona fides, right?
Yes.
He was a writer on Next Generation. He went on to Deep Space Nine. He was a writer on Voyager. You can't have, unless you're Gene Roddenberry or DC Fontana, you don't have more Star Wars or Star Trek cred than that.
No doubt. And look, for everybody else out there, there's an element we haven't talked about yet that we are totally missing. That was another major drawing point. And I truly believe this about a lot of just, movie content and television series content in general, the soundtrack to Battlestar. And I'm not just talking about the cool ship sound effects and this and that. the soundtrack alone, just watch the series. You will know exactly what I'm talking about. There's something about music and soundtracks that when you hear it, it generates feelings and just I can't explain it. It's just it's inspirational almost. And I know that people know what I'm talking about, because you can watch a movie, and if you don't have the music on, the movie's just so lame and boring. But when you hear the music, like, okay, the Avengers, when the Avengers intro starts, tell me that just doesn't give you goosebumps, right?
Right.
And that's
Well,
recent. That's
and
recent.
one of the coolest things I've ever seen was going to the music of Battlestar. The original's like 1978, 79. I guess it was 79 when it came out.
Yeah.
The original theme song was really awesome. It was a big orchestral thing, because after Star Wars, everything had to be a big orchestral thing, which is good.
Right.
I love it.
Right.
And so, but when they reimagined it, they had a whole different theme. And Bear McCreary, who did the soundtrack of Battlestar, is a genius.
Yeah, I know.
And I've listened to that soundtrack of BSG reimagined more than I can even tell you. But but the genius thing they did in there was that they took the original theme and made it a popular, like an anthem for the colonial, the colonial anthem.
It's brilliant.
So they would play it at events and where the troops would be lined up and stuff like that.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. I mean, without getting into names of the composers, because obviously I don't know all of them, but I mean, obviously
Jerry Goldsmith, who did Star Trek.
I think so. I'd probably have to look that one up. But I mean, just as simple as John Williams. I mean, hello, Hans Zimmer. I mean, just to name two, you can put in those two alone, you can basically credit just about every popular, movie, from the 80s, 90s, all the way into today, just those two alone. I mean, the amazing music that those people have come up with, that I think would make or break the films that they were associated with or attributed to. I mean, just unbelievable. It's just amazing. It's amazing how those soundtracks really resonate with the mind. And when we talk about, because when I watch movies, when I watch TV series, it's a means for me to escape, right? I mean, we all have our day jobs, we have our everyday lives, we have our stresses, we have our anxieties. I mean, everybody, look, we all have that, and it's no fun, right? And I truly believe music is a therapy. I truly believe watching a television series, watching a movie, it's a therapy. It acts as a therapy. It generates different stimuli, within our biological being, right? And if you don't believe that, or if you don't know that, or if you don't understand what I'm getting at is, go find your favorite song when you're, and just listen to it. And I bet you'll get excited. You'll get goosebumps. That's all stimuli. That's all stimuli. You're stimulating neurons, you're in your body, and that's all chemically generated, right? Neurotransmitters and all that stuff. So that's the theory behind it. And it's also, to me, the reason why when you're feeling sad, there's certain songs that resonate with you when you're sad. Because when you're sad, you want to be alone. You don't want anybody around. You just want to crawl into a corner and blah, blah, blah. But what's one thing that you want that you don't realize that you need until you have it there and you're like, oh my gosh, I needed this? It's music. It's music. And it's the same thing when you're, I can talk about when I'm out on the lake, when I'm on a boat, there's certain type of music I want to have on, I want to have playing, because it brings me back to the summertime when I was a kid. It brings me back to the days I was playing in a swimming pool or whatever, just in the backyard. That's how amazing music is. And so that's why I think soundtracks are so important. And some of the best soundtracks out there, that, just to name a few, I mean, I find them on YouTube. And I'll just listen to them throughout work, because a lot of them are orchestral, right? There's not a lot of vocals to them, which some of them do have, but no, they're just great to listen to in the background. And man, it's amazing. It's just amazing.
Yeah. I did look at it. Is Jerry Goldsmith who did. And what's And what's interesting is he composed that for the motion picture, Star Trek: The Motion Picture,
Yes,
first one, and then they carried that over to the next generation.
Yes, they did, and
yeah.
That's why it's amazing listening to that. See, I didn't know that when I was a kid growing up, and like I said, my dad was watching. He was religious about it, right? Whenever it was, I don't know if it was a Thursday night or a Saturday night. I'd probably have to ask him. He could tell you when the new episode of The Next Generation would come on. TNG was on. You just knew it because you hear that soundtrack. Later on, when I started diving into more Star Trek lore, of course, I wanted to go back to the original series, which I did. But the original series, I really got into it in the movies, right? With the first movie, with Star Trek: The Motion Picture. I know that people will talk about, oh my gosh, that's probably one of those lame, boring movies.
I love the first one.
It is, besides Star Trek 4. So I don't know if you agree. Besides Star Trek 4, that is my favorite movie. It's the first one, and it's because if you have the director's cut, you have that opening sequence. Isn't that amazing? That orchestral opening sequence of that movie where you're in space. The screen's black. You've got stars. You're traveling. You're not in warp speed. You're just traveling, and I don't know how long it lasts, and it's just like it is building up to something amazing.
Yeah, you have to get the director's cut. It's very good. But it's always been, I've always loved it because the problem that people have with it, I think, is that they expect an action movie, which we got with Wrath of Khan.
Yes.
But which is also awesome and one of the best science fiction movies of all time. But the motion picture was what we would call hard science fiction.
Yes.
It was like for science nerds.
Yes.
And the theories and the whole V'ger being Voyager and all that. Awesome. Spoiler alert for Star Trek.
Spoiler alert. What a brilliant!
I loved it. I loved everything about it. I loved the uniforms. I loved the new characters. Everything about it.
But I mean, how telling is it? How telling is it that a piece of technology that had a very simple technological brain, right? Because Voyager had to have a brain. And sorry, I'm spoiling the movie. It's a massive spoiler too, if you haven't seen it. It's massive. I mean, there's probably not a better spoiler than that. Or, I mean, a better, it's amazing. But think about it. Designed by humans, a very simple brain to serve as one function as it was traveling through space, right? What happened to it? Developed a consciousness, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's essentially what it did it not? I mean, unless I'm totally off base.
Sure, yeah.
It had gained enough knowledge, because that's technically what it was supposed to do as it was traveling through, which was an awesome sequence in the movie, by the way. I think whenever it was, because Spock melded with it, right?
Yeah.
At the end, Spock melded with it. Yeah. Anyways, it was amazing when I found out, because how telling is that, like, for today, right? I mean, we're pushing the extremes to create, machine learning and intelligence and all that stuff. Yet a simple computer that, if given enough time with whatever directed with its program, given enough time, developed its own consciousness. It developed its own consciousness enough that it could actually create holograms, and it could reproduce physical features. Anyways, I don't want to ruin the movie anymore, even though I've just pretty much destroyed it. Awesome movie, fantastic, loved it. And leading into the Wrath of Khan, which, I know I mentioned that my favorite's still Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home. I just love that. There was something about that movie.
Amazing.
Maybe a pivotal time in my childhood. But yeah, the Wrath of Khan, man, that was a cool movie. That one was dark. That one got dark for me. I mean, from the very beginning of that movie, that one was pretty dark. And there were some dark themes in that movie as well. So
yeah, well, there's still scenes in that kind of give me chills, like that scene where Chekhov they're exploring Khan's crash ship.
Yes.
And they come out, and Khan and his guy, and it's like a blizzard or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
come
It was a
out of
sandstorm or
that.
something, right? Yeah.
That's just, oh my God, that still gives
It's
me the
scary.
chills when I see that scene. Yeah.
And then let's not even, I mean, let's get into the, once again, there were two. What was cool about that movie, what I really liked about that movie is, so the first one was pretty linear. The first one was definitely pretty linear, but that movie had like two storylines going on at once.
Oh.
But they were, to me, they were really, really well thought out and well planned. They were really, really good. But it fascinated me how that movie ended, right? Because it ended, spoiler alert for everybody else out there as well, it ended with Spock dying. And what did Spock do? Spock sacrificed himself, right? But Spock was a logical being. He was Vulcan. They don't have feelings. They don't have emotions, right? But Spock was half human, or I don't know what the percentage is. And forgive me for all the major guru Star Trek fans out there, because I mean, I'm not that level. I'm definitely mid, if anything.
Well, I'll tell you how it was explained on Star Trek Enterprise, which I know is not everybody's. I loved Enterprise. I don't know why I don't know why everybody hates it.
Look, I was a Scott Bakula fan from Quantum Leap, so that automatically gave it props or points for me. So
yeah, and I love that show as well. But if you so in that show, Jolene Blalock played T'Pau.
Yep.
Or T'Pol, excuse me. T'Pau was Spock's girlfriend, I think. But T'Pol. And T'Pol explained it like this, that Vulcans actually feel emotions more strongly than humans do, which is why they had to develop the discipline of being logical, or else they would be too aggressive and too overwhelmed by their feelings.
That's it. That's interesting. Okay. Yeah. I was not aware of that theory. So once again, just showing you my knowledge base, but that's pretty interesting. But understanding that, I mean, I guess that could technically explain why Spock did what he did. But there's a catch, in my opinion, on this part. Why did Spock meld with Bones? Why did he give McCoy his, I'm going to say, call it a soul, his Vulcan soul? Why did he do that? Because Spock, what was the point of that? Because it could have destroyed a human body, because as you just explained, if their emotions are so highly evolved over human emotions, then just giving a regular human like Bones, even though he's highly intelligent, giving him a fraction of your emotions or your memories would probably destroy him. And it almost did, if you remember the movie, the third movie. But interestingly enough, though, I've always been curious on why Spock did that, because Spock did not know he was going to be brought back. How would he have known that? How would he have known that the humans were smart enough to do that? Or did they? Didn't
the Genesis bomb go off before he died?
Maybe.
I think it did.
But the Genesis,
because that's what actually killed Khan, right? Weren't they caught in the?
Yes, it was going on at that time. I think the planet was basically going through an evolution, but the whole concept behind the Genesis project was the evolution was like.
Let me posit a theory, a hypothesis.
Yeah, go for it.
So, if the bomb was already in process, and I should go back and rewatch it, even though I've seen it like 1,000 times, but obviously haven't memorized it. But let's say Spock knew that it was Genesis was reforming the planet.
Yeah.
He sacrifices himself, plants his conscious in McCoy. Now, hear me out.
Okay.
What if Spock was able to subconsciously influence McCoy to suggest that they send his body to the new Genesis planet?
Okay, I was going to go there. I was going to go there as well. But man, that to me, that's a stretch. That's a stretch, because we didn't see anything leading to that or suggesting that.
Yeah.
We just didn't. We saw the ceremony. We saw they were doing what they would have normally done for any one of their officers when they passed away, putting him in a proton torpedo tube and shooting him out the torpedo. did they realize that they were still very close to the Genesis planet as it was evolving, and it just happened to be pulled into its gravitational pull? Did they send it there on purpose because there was a theory that they thought, hey, what if we send it? I don't think we were intelligent enough. I don't know if we'll ever get a real true answer to that, Mike. But all I have to say is it all worked out. Every bit of it worked out, which it's still interesting to me that it worked out that way. So,
yeah, well,
because the third movie, The Search for Spock.
Yeah. And we may never know, because most of, writers, they don't want to tell you. They love the fact that the internet, everybody's guessing and coming up with their,
Sure.
So,
and I'm okay with that. I am okay with that, because that's what makes it more fun. Hence why I think I'm such a big, sci-fi adventure action fan, because I love escaping into those worlds that people have created. I just do.
And you mentioned that, and I like this to think about why it is that we do love that. It's because for millions of years, the only way we had to go beyond our everyday life was through dreams.
Right.
And then parallel to that, for long before we had written language, the only way that humans, after we developed our vocal skills, to pass on knowledge was through stories.
Yeah.
And stories give you a structure to remember things, how to do things, whatever. Mm-hmm. So we had two things going at the same time: this oral tradition of telling stories to understand, and then the dreams that took us into other worlds. So what happens is, when we come back to the technology, and when we have the technology, we then use the technology to tell stories that take us into other worlds.
Yeah, to realize our dreams, to bring our dreams to life.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is awesome. And I know that there's variations of talent out there that are able to do that. Some that we can put on very high pedestals, in my opinion. But I still believe in some of the simplest, beginnings sometimes, inspire some of the greatest stories. I mean, let's talk about, J.K. Rowling, right? Whether you care about, her controversial life today or whatever, just sticking to the pure creativity and the world that she created. She started from nothing. She had nothing, and she created one of the most incredible worlds. So incredible that we're already rebooting it. Which, I mean, I can't believe it's already been 25 years since we've had.
Well, let's face it, each film only adapted a very small fraction of each book.
Right. And that's fine. Obviously we all know that. We can't capture the book's always better than the movie. Right. Mm-hmm. I mean, I there's probably one or two out there, that aren't, but for the majority of everything in creation, the books are typically better than the movies. And I give credit to that, because you can't always capture everything. If you want, that would be awesome, but you'd probably be there forever. And you might have look, Tolkien created the most amazing worlds ever. And I don't think we'll ever be, outdone ever. But there are segments in his books where it continues to go on and on and on, talking about leaves and trees and
Two Towers.
Right. But it all makes sense. You don't need to play that out in a movie. Right. But there are things that happen within those moments, but it's but the rest of it is back to the sound of the wind in the trees again. And it's amazing. It's amazing.
I remember the first time I read Two Towers, I was like,
yeah.
I was young. I was 12 probably. And I was like, wow, there's a lot of just people walking in this. They just walk and walk and walk.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing. But yet people still read the whole book, and it's a national treasure. Yeah. It's a national treasure. Yeah. It was it's such a national treasure that they still to this day made three of the most the greatest movies ever.
Sure.
Thank you,
well,
Peter. Thank you, Peter Jackson. Thank you, Peter Jackson.
And everybody was skeptical. All the Tolkien fans were skeptical.
Yes, I know.
Because how can you bring that to life? And when I went in there, I probably had read the books completely over, because I read them every year from the time I was like 12. So I'd read them 10 or more times by then. It was like exactly what I imagined. It was amazing.
See, that's unheard of, by the way.
Yeah, it just doesn't happen.
And isn't it amazing? Isn't it amazing to you how, and maybe that's just how the human brain works. I don't know. Maybe there probably is some science behind this, but how is it that, when you see these characters in these movies, is it because we form a connection with them, or is it because it really is like you could not have picked a better person to be that character? Does that make sense? Like,
how much of it is casting?
I cannot imagine anyone, either that or the casting agents are just incredible at their job, because I cannot imagine anyone else playing Legolas. I cannot imagine anyone else playing Aragorn. You know what I mean?
Although we're going to skip that. We're going to get that soon.
I know.
For Gollum. Yeah.
I know. Seriously. But the point is, it's amazing to me how that works out. Not that I want to venture down the road of talking about Harry Potter, but neither here nor there. I'm still going to watch the new series when it comes out, obviously. I'm not going to give up on it. I'm going to watch it because I am a Harry Potter fan. Always have been, always will be. I'm not going to look at it as a replacement. It will always be near and dear to my heart because I grew up with them, with the original movies, and of course the books, obviously. Got them back there in my little Harry Potter trunk behind me. But it will be difficult. I'm not going to lie. It will be very difficult for me to see Hagrid, but not see Hagrid. It's going to be difficult for me to see Harry and Hermione and Ron, but not see the Harry, Hermione, and Ron that I know. Because now when I read the books, when I go back and read the books, because there's reread factor for sure with Harry Potter, those are the characters that I see. I don't see these new ones. Not taking a dig or anything at them. It's their time to shine. I wish them the success. They're a part of an amazing franchise. I think it's going to capture maybe another generation, a much younger generation. But for me, and I think for the general population for the past 25 years, it's going to be tough. I'm just going to say it's going to be tough. So.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite character?
Well, since I have to think about it, I'm probably going to say no. There were too many, Mike. There were too many that captured my heart, right? I mean, Sirius Black, he was only in it for a couple movies, right? But he was a pivotal character for me.
Those are my favorite ones too.
Aren't they? They are the best. They are the best. So I mean, I would probably put him there as probably one of my most favorite characters. I just really enjoyed.
I'd probably list Hermione, and then I can't think of anybody's name tonight.
That's all right.
The teacher of the dark arts, Snape.
Yeah, he's
Hermione and then Snape.
Yeah, he's super popular. He is super popular.
I mean, Hermione. The reason is because if you actually, just watch those movies again. Harry screws up a lot of things. He's always messing everything up. If Hermione wasn't there to save his butt like every 10 minutes, he wouldn't have survived,
Mike,
very long.
Hermione was the scientist. Let's be honest here. Yeah, she was the one. She was the logical one. Everything was logic with her. She was the scientist, man. She was the scholar and all that. I get that, but she was the one that was always like injecting logic into everything. Mm-hmm. Harry and Ron were just like whimsical, They
wouldn't have survived 5 minutes without Hermione.
Yeah, but no, they're all great. They were all great. Every character has a place in my heart. Just about everyone does. Every one of them.
Well, so let's give a preview of some of the things we want to talk about maybe in the future. I want to do So I think my main thing today was the Pluribus Gaia hypothesis.
Yeah.
But I'd like to talk in the future about Marvel and the character of Adam Warlock, because he's by far and away my favorite Marvel character for lots of reasons. But I've got every single appearance of him in every Marvel comic up to around 2000-ish, when the guy who really owned the character, Jim Starlin, even though he didn't create him, when he left Marvel because Marvel was trying to tell him how to write stories. And then people started writing Warlock stories out of character for Warlock. But up to then, there's basically one guy from the 70s on, more or less, who wrote Warlock and Thanos, and that was Jim Starlin.
Yeah.
They were his baby. In fact, he created Thanos. But a lot of people talk about Warlock in the Guardians movie.
Yeah.
So that's not Adam Warlock. Well, I have an opposing theory about it. It's not the Starlin version of Warlock when he's older, but it is the first version of Warlock when he was first created by Stan Lee in Fantastic Four 65. Mm-hmm. And then 66 when we first saw him. He was in a cocoon in 65, and then
he was in a cocoon. I remember.
Yeah, he pops out of it in 66. And when Warlock first appeared, he was basically a baby or a child, and acted very innocently but did bad things as a child would do.
Oh, he's good.
Like he stole Sif, who was Thor's girlfriend at the time. Today she's Warrior Sif, But
yes, I do remember that.
Yeah. So the movie version was fairly accurate because in a lot of things that Marvel is criticized for and how they tell their stories is by people who don't connect the dots back to the earlier forms of those characters. So if you look at the Avengers movie, it's not anything like an Avengers comic from the 80s or 90s, but you go back to Avengers #1, Loki did in fact form the Avengers. I mean, they came together to fight Loki. So they're pretty true to a lot of the stuff. There are some characters I don't think that Marvel gets right. I didn't like that they made the Eternals robots.
That whole story was that was totally off the reservation in my opinion. Totally. I have the original. Guardians.
The original Eternals books are really cool.
Guardians of the Galaxy was another one that I mean, it was fun. It was really enjoyable. I love what Marvel did with that, but it wasn't
the original Guardians of the Galaxy.
Exactly. So
you don't have Vance Astro. You don't have what's her name with the flaming hair.
Yeah, they were all ones that came later. They were like later Guardians. So
but they should do a movie of the actual Guardians of the Galaxy, because I'd love to see that.
Well,
that's okay if you want to keep Star-Lord in it. That's fine. But
I that's a character that I absolutely loved. I loved all the characters that they put together, and I think it was necessary. Look, the story that they put together was great, but I do agree with you though, Mike. Marvel's another topic for another episode. I mean, because we can dive into I can dive into my upbringing with Marvel, from thanks to my dad, growing up with multiple versions of the Fantastic Four. And we still, to this day, I still am not happy with what we have as far as the Fantastic Four is concerned. I mean, just, there's so many things that we could talk about, when it comes to Marvel, but no, I do agree. I mean, look, subject matter like this is the premise of our show. Everybody needs to understand the many worlds of Mike and Anthony, and
there are many. There are multitudes.
There are.
Well, I think the MCU Fantastic Four, I think, was the best one, but that's a low bar. It's a very low bar.
I know. That's
we
what I'm
still haven't had a great one.
That's what I'm talking about. It's those types of things that, we definitely, I think we have enough knowledge on that we can, venture down those good paths of discussion.
At least Galactus wasn't a cloud.
Right. Seriously. I mean, and people don't know that. I mean, a lot of people do, but there's a lot of people that don't. So, but
the same thing at the Green Lantern movie. They made the villain a big cloud. I'm sorry. Don't make your villain a cloud.
Yeah. Parallax, right? It was Parallax, right? It was, that was frustrating. I think it was Parallax, right? I'm not too brushed up on DC, by the way. Grew up a Marvel fan from my father. He was a Marvel guy. Didn't do much DC. I think it's because DC had a little bit earlier start. I mean, I know the comics before that were a part of Marvel later on were still in existence, but they weren't Marvel. But DC was pretty early on, and we just never got into DC.
Well, so. Marvel pretty much had a continuous existence. They just changed names. It started off, it was Timely Comics in the beginning. Yeah. The very first issue, though, was called Marvel. The very first Marvel, and it had the Human Torch in it.
Yes.
And the original Human Torch, who was an android. Yeah. And
not Johnny Storm, yeah.
No, and I think I still call him Namor.
Namor, the Submariner.
Namor. And I think it is. Don't quote me on that. And then
I think you're right too. Yeah.
And then Stan Lee came in, and those started like 1939-ish, 1940. And then Stan Lee started off as it was like his uncle or somebody was the publisher, and he started off like as the coffee boy or something. But like somebody was gone one day, and he's like, I could write a comic book. And so very quickly, Stan Lee became a staff writer at Timely. And even though he didn't create the character Captain America, he did write in the very first Captain America comic book that came out in the 40s.
Which was older, yes, very much older.
There were several. When they used to make comic books in the 40s, I wasn't around then, by the way. But when they wouldn't just have one story in them; they would have like 4 or 5 stories in it.
Yeah.
So the very first story, Stan Lee didn't write, but he wrote the second one. So he was always involved with Captain America, even though that's a whole other topic to talk about.
I know
how much Stan Lee says he did, and how much he actually did. How much Jack Kirby did.
He and Jack Kirby, I know, but to me, he's still an American icon.
Sure.
I mean, I can't knock the guy. I mean, he still was a part of something amazing that is still to this day. It's been reinvigorated. So
he had an unlimited imagination for all those different characters.
Right.
I mean, that he created. Or co-created.
So,
and,
I'd love to.
I'm the same as you. I'm way more of a Marvel fan. I have always read DC, but it's never given me that feeling of love for the comics that Marvel has. I've always liked the fact. Okay, so here's the difference. To my mind, as a kid growing up, DC was kind of a little like the characters were too good, like they were too goody-goody or something. Yeah. And Superman's a perfect example of that. He's just a Boy Scout all the way, right?
Yeah.
Whereas Marvel, it was like real people, like dealing with things and relationships and struggles, and the protagonists were far from perfect. So I liked Marvel because it was a little bit more, I don't know, real to me.
No, and I think that's what a lot of people will tell you as well. I mean, the characters for DC, from my understanding and upbringing, they were very much like they were alien type people.
Yeah.
Whereas Peter Parker was that was me. I was Peter Parker, right?
Yeah.
And I got bit by a spider, and all of a sudden, oh my gosh, I have superpowers. I was a smart scientist, right? I had a pretty girlfriend, Sue Storm, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I had a couple other buddies with me, you know, and then all of a sudden we went into space and we're struck with a, you know, radioactive, you know, storm. And then all of a sudden we came back with these crazy, amazing superpowers. I mean, that's what I loved about Marvel. You know, Superman was born, you know, a super being unbeknownst to him on his planet.
Yeah.
You know, but when he came to Earth, it was like, oh, wow, you know. And then, you know, Batman, he was a wealthy kid. You know, so I guess maybe the character of Batman and the character of Iron Man, you know, could probably kind of be, you know, compared to the same, right? Wealthy, billionaire, blah, blah, blah. Granted, you know, a little different. Tony Stark was definitely always a little rich kid. You know, that spoiled rich
Tony
kid.
always struggling with his demons, his alcoholism, and whereas Bruce basically had a perfect life.
He struggled. Yes, he struggled with like sadness and loss, right? Mm-hmm. And because of that, I think that's where he still to this day does not have a superpower. Never did. His was all about a supporting suit and weaponry and all that stuff that he had. Whereas Iron Man was the same thing. Iron Man had to, but to me, Iron Man became Iron Man. You know, I'm not getting back to, you know, venturing back to the very first comic, you know, that he was in, but to this actual storyline or the lore. But it's like almost as if he was just tinkering around and playing with toys, and, you know, and yeah, I'm just going to develop, you know.
I've always loved the character of Iron Man, but I'm going to give you a beef about something that's happened in the comics and the MCU.
Yeah.
Which was, I hate lack of a better word, the Iron Manization of all the characters. So it seems like everybody gets an Iron Man suit. Like,
yeah,
Spider-Man, his suit for a long time was like Stark Tech.
Yep.
I want to see Spider-Man make his own suit, like in the comic books.
Yep.
And he's a brilliant scientist in the comic books.
Yeah.
A child prodigy, really. And I want him to have limitations, because all this Stark Tech just removes all the limitations.
Yeah.
When you have kill mode, you know.
Yeah.
And
I know.
I want Tony Stark to be Iron Man, and that's it. And Rhodey's fine. War Machine.
War Machine. Yeah.
But what happens is they've given everybody gets an Iron Man suit. It's like even at one point,
Ironheart. You know that Ironheart. You know the little kid gets an Iron Man suit.
You get an Iron Man suit.
Pepper Potts got an Iron Man suit. You know, yeah. I mean, I agree. I think it was a little overplayed, but I still was very much in love with that character and that storyline, by the way, because if it really wasn't for that, we wouldn't have the MCU that we had.
That's true. Yeah.
Post Endgame or pre-Endgame. Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I love the Spider-Man movies. If I could tweak one thing, I would have him transition to, and I know he has done that. Okay.
Yep.
I get
that. No, I know.
But I want to see
don't have to worry about it anymore.
Yeah. Nobody's getting any Iron Man suits anymore. Yeah.
I was still a little bothered by that, but you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, another example is, even though it wasn't Stark Tech, Black Panther never, in the comics, his suit wasn't like technological. It's just his reflexes were awesome and stuff, you know?
Yeah.
And so I want to see him being more Black Panther, relying on his awesome fighting skills and less relying on gadgets on his suit.
I did love his first appearance though in the movies. I loved I thought it was awesome. It was in Civil War, and man, I loved that. That was so awesome. And then you know, his first movie was great. It's a shame, unfortunately, God rest his soul, that we lost him, but Chadwick Boseman. But that was man, I saw that character just going far. But
I think they're going to age up his son and have him take up the mantle.
Let's hope they do something like that. Would be nice. It would be nice. I don't want to see Killmonger, you know, have a change of heart, you know, come back to life, change of heart, and survive and whatever. But that's another story for another time. It's another topic of discussion, Mike.
Yeah, don't make all of our villains into good guys.
Right. So, but
anyway, unless they think they're a good guy, like Thanos really believed in his ideology,
which is what made him a very awesome villain.
Mm-hmm.
It really did. I mean, I'm not a fan of villains. Don't get me wrong, but it really made him a good.
I'm a fan of loving villains that we love to hate. I mean,
right.
Going back to Star Wars, Darth Vader is the best villain probably ever made.
Yeah. Yeah. Because he still had he still had good in him. He still had human in him. I mean, Luke told him he felt it. Thank goodness for the Force.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think you can have a great story unless you have a great villain. It's necessary.
Yeah. Yes.
And like X-Files, you had cigarette smoking man who mainly was in the background, but he was so convincing that he was the leader of this, or one of the leaders of this global conspiracy.
So devious. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I get it. Well, Mike, this has been a really great pilot episode, in my opinion.
Yeah. So if you like two guys shooting the breeze about music and science and TV shows,
as many geeky, nerdy topics that we can get into.
Yeah. I'll probably become more focused in our outlines and stuff as we go forward, because we don't have one.
I'm okay with the tangents. I am. I mean, I think it's more organic and genuine, and I hope everybody else will be able to, to resonate, and it'll resonate with them, and maybe they'll be drawn more to it. Everybody's welcome. I want to share, in as many conversations as we can, and love to hear, anybody else's opinion. If someday we ever do get an audience, it would be amazing.
Yeah. But I apologize for all the things I got wrong in here. I'm sure I got some, I think I called her Bo-Katana. Her name's Bo-Katan. I know that.
Hey, it's okay. We're going to be fine. One of these days, once again, if we have an audience, we will be corrected, and we welcome that, please. But no, Mike, I always have a good time with you, man, having conversations like this, deep conversations in these subject matters. For everybody, we've been doing this for years. And we're working on some things together as far as
making stories and making music for years, and not these YouTube.
Right. We hope to be able to share a lot of this stuff someday with everybody, with everyone. There's not one person I don't want to reach with our stories, with future music. Some of the songs we've written that we haven't put, recorded yet. I mean, all of that stuff. So hopefully someday we'll be able to share that stuff. And in the meantime, you can find us here chit-chatting about all of this stuff, and hopefully gaining more friends.
Yeah. And someday I'll have better lighting.
Hey, once again, pilot episode. Cut us a little slack, everybody. Pilot episode,
Yeah. I literally just have like desk lamps up here right now. So
it's all good, man.
Yeah.
It's all good.
All right. Well, this was fun, and I'm looking forward to doing it again. So let's keep the conversation going.
Sounds great.
I feel like I need to quote Casey Kasem here. Keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars.
You know what? That is perfect. Although it was something that he did. We'll have to coin our own ending or closing.
Yeah, I know. I've been listening a whole other subject. I've been listening to a lot of American Top 40 reruns from the 80s. That's a whole other thing.
Yeah. Hold that thought. We'll pick up on that one next episode.
Okay. Goodbye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.